وصحبه ومن والاه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت إن شئت تجعل الحزن سهلا. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من أن نشرك بك شيئا نعلمه ونستغفرك لما لا نعلمه ثم أما بعد. So today is part 2 of Introduction to Islamic Law or Fiqh or Islamic Jurisprudence. We talked about the definition of fiqh last week and the knowledge of the practical Sharia ruling which are extracted from their sources, Quran and the Sunnah. And we said that sometimes we need more sources because the Quran and Sunnah cannot directly answer all questions because every day new questions come up. And because we Muslims believe that Sharia or Islamic law is valid and applicable at all times and places, then the question comes, how could a legal system be valid and applicable at all times and places while the text is limited and the questions are unlimited? The number of the ayat of the Quran are limited and the number of the authentic hadith are limited, but the questions are unlimited, right? In business, in medicine, every field, you have new questions, and Sharia is supposed to answer all these questions. So that's the very logical question comes. And if we look at civil laws, we see one of the common phenomenon is that laws always change, always. Law today is not the same as 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Even constitutions has to be amended because time and place change. So the social norm changed. Therefore, the legal system also must correspond with the social change. Yes. So is this the case in Islam? Imagine if the law does not change. In this case, the law becomes so rigid, irrelevant, right? And as it is the case actually in many laws here, even here in America, a lot of laws need to change. It will take some time, but it will change eventually. So why constitutions are amended and why laws, contract law or family law, excuse me, allergies stuff. Oh, thank you. Oh, to help, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So it is the case with Islamic law that the Islamic law should change. So that's the difference between rigidity and flexibility, right? Flexible law, flexible legal systems change as the social norm changes. Rigid, outdated laws don't change, and therefore it becomes a source of troubles and a burden on people. And this is the case also in Islamic law. Depends on who is the judge who understands Islamic law and makes fatwa or judgment based on their understanding of Islamic law. So sometimes people feel Islamic law is so rigid, irrelevant, and doesn't make sense. And sometimes, especially those who have higher level of knowledge, they think Islamic law is so flexible and can adapt to new contexts. And this is how it's supposed to be. If we believe that Sharia is valid at all times and places, then we must understand that Sharia is flexible. There's one area in Sharia that unchangeable, solid foundations cannot change at all times and places. Ahkam da'ima. And most of the ahkam in Islam are subject to change. In fact, many fuqaha and scholars, they found out that you cannot be consistent with applying the same law at all times and places. And therefore, even if there's a text, sometimes the custom changed and therefore the law must also change. That's embedded in our Islamic law. So if we understand Islam as a flexible religion and Sharia is flexible legal system, then we need to understand the text and the spirit and the maqasid and the objectives of the text. Otherwise, if we apply it in the same way at all times and places, then problems will occur. For example, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited what's known as bay' al-gharar. One of the transactions that the Prophet ﷺ says prohibited in Islam is bay' al-gharar. Gharar means jahala or ignorance. You don't know exactly how much you'll pay, or you don't know exactly how much you'll get. That's called gharar. When you buy something, sorry, must be the price must be known, and the service or the product must be well defined. Like when you buy a house, you know the limits of the house, all descriptions are there, right? And the price is this. So the buyer actually knows what he buys, and the seller knows how he will get, right? If something is not known in this transaction, it's called bay' al-gharar, that's prohibited. Like you go to a fisherman, for example. That's example موجود في كل كتب الفقه. You go to a fisherman, and he, before he sailed in the morning, said, okay, you know what? I'm going to buy whatever you fish today. I'll give you $100, and whatever you bring, I will take. He said, okay, fine. What is unknown here? The price is known, $100. Exactly. The quantity of he might come back with nothing, right? Or he can come back with so much. If the average is like 20 fish, for example, and he can get 50, who's going to be upset here? The fisherman, because he got so much. And what if he got only 5 fish? The buyer actually will be upset, and this will bring disputes and conflicts and fighting and disagreements. So Rasulullah ﷺ prohibited any transaction that includes undefined product or price. All right. Did tell someone, go and paint my house, I will give you something. Then he finished painting the house, and he gives him something that much less than what he expects. This is what actually causes conflicts, right? Maybe it happened with you, that's why you're laughing. Of Trump. Oh, okay. All right. So you don't know exactly how much you'll get, and when you finish the job, you get something much less. This is where that's why the idea of having a contract is to determine expectations of the buyer and the seller, right? So we have expectation, right? I expect you to do a good job, and then I'll pay you this amount of money to avoid any kind of conflicts. Even sometimes when I have a clear contract, people also have dispute, let alone if you don't have a contract. So bay' al-gharar is prohibited. So now new transactions came about that did not exist in the time of the Prophet that include some gharar. If you buy a watermelon, for example, you know the price, $6.5, right? But you don't know what's inside. It could be very delicious and nice. It could be terrible, right? There's some unknown factor here, right? Not only that, what is known as عقد الاستصناع. The fiqh al-Islami is something called عقد الاستصناع. Yani you get the raw material, clothes, for example, and you go to a tailor and give him the material, and he will take the size of your body and everything, and he promises that he will turn this into a suit, right? In a week, and you will pay him $100 for his job, okay? Now, there's some unknown factor here, whether it's going to fit you or not, whether he'll finish it in a week or 3 or 4 or 6 weeks, as it happens most of the time. And people get upset. I have a wedding on Saturday. I have to get it on Friday. So I'm sorry. I had so much work and could not finish it on time. And some sort of unknown factor here. Right. And what if, God forbid, fire came and burned everything in the store, including your material that you bought from another store, especially if it's expensive. So is he responsible to pay you back the price of the piece of cloth that you give to him, or he's not responsible for this? If it is absolutely not his responsibility, something happened, earthquake or hurricane or something, and your stuff are ruined, is he responsible for this or not? The fuqaha actually changed. يعني تضمين الصناع. It's called تضمين الصناع. In the early days, no, he's not responsible because people have some sort of piety and righteousness. They were not intentional. But later on, they found out that some of these tailors or furniture makers, they sell or they claim that, oh, I'm sorry, someone came and stole my store and he stole his stuff. So the amana went down, righteousness went down. So the fuqaha said, no, if you take material from someone to turn it into something else, then you are responsible for it, right? Another example of jahala that included, but the fuqaha said it's okay because the urf changed. What's known as public bathroom, like the Turkish or Moroccan bathroom, right? You go there to take a shower, but and you pay a specific amount of money, but the owner of the hammam does not know how long you're going to stay there, how much water you're going to use. There's many things are not well determined, but the urf, خلاص, يعني the owner of the hammam is happy with this, and the customers are happy with this. So although it includes some unknown factors, but the fuqaha, similar today, the open buffet restaurant, right? You pay a certain amount of money and people go eat all what you want, right? Some people eat one plate and that's it. And others will spend hours, right? And they eat very well, and because this is the only place where they can fill their stomach. So it is unknown how much will they eat, right? Technically, this kind of transaction is prohibited. You need to know how much you pay and how much you'll eat, right? You want this plate like in other restaurants. You get this meal, you pay this, right? But the ulama said that because the urf changed and the owner of the business is happy, he makes his own calculation, right? And the customers are happy, so let it be. Okay? So why are we talking about this? Yeah, we talk about the flexibility, and the concept of flexibility is a huge subject that shows that Sharia intentionally, that's why when you talk about different opinions, it's perfect. This is one of the factors that make Sharia flexible, to have various opinions. If you have all scholars agree on one opinion, this is khalas, you cannot change it. But when you have a variety of opinions, that's rahmah, that's mercy, that's good. Because one fiqhi opinion could be very unpopular at certain time and place, and then becomes so popular later on. Best example, 3 talaq in one. If someone divorces his wife 3 times, he said you are divorced, divorced, divorce. All 4 fuqaha, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, and Ahmad, they said 3. 3 is 3. Until Ibn Taymiyyah came in the 8th century, Fijra, and he found out that the original hukm was that counts as 1, right? And not only that, he noticed that people, when they divorce their wives 3 times in one sitting, then they regret. And in order to go around the law, which people are very creative in trying to find ways around the law, what they do, he cannot remarry her until or unless she married someone else, and he divorces her, and then the first husband can remarry her, right? And then they came up with this muhallil. He asked one of his friends to marry his wife and then divorce her, and then he goes, and of course that's haram, right? That's not, So Ibn Taymiyyah said no, 3 divorce in one counts as 1 divorce only. And he was thrown in jail because of that. He was considered like zindiq, and he's against the ijma' of the ummah. And how dare you say something that all other ulama said otherwise? He's a mujtahid. He reached the level of ijtihad. We talk about ijtihad and taqlid. He reached such high level of ijtihad. He said, well, when he's studied in depth the subject, he found out that 3 divorces in the time of the Prophet used to count as 1. In the time of Abu Bakr, used to count as 1. It was in the time of Umar when he found out that people are refusing the easy way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described for divorce, and they لَقَدْ تَعَجَّلُوا فِي أَمْرٍ كَانَتْ لَهُمْ فِيهِ أَنَا. Umar said that I see people that Allah made it easy for you. You can divorce your wife and then regret, go back, no problem. It happens again. You get angry, you divorce your wife, and you regret. Then you go back normally without new contract or anything. Okay? But if you divorce your wife for the third time, then you do not deserve her anymore. Halas, right? So this can save families, right? Because people get angry and they say the word divorce, right? And then they regret. They don't know. They were angry or upset or whatever. So Allah made it easy for people, made way for them to come back, right? But they closed this they burned the bridge. They burned the bridge. There's no way back. When someone wants to divorce his wife 3 times in one, he said, whoever from now on, whoever divorces 3 in 1, I will count this as 3. He was the head of the state and he has the right to make laws. And he wanted to scare people from this, like when they increase the punishment of a crime, to emphasize that this is unacceptable. So, and then none of the Sahaba objected to this, as far as we know. So this is considered ijma', consensus. So when something is made, or law is made in the time of the Sahaba, and we don't know anybody who objected to it, so consider this ijma', ijma' al-Sahaba. And the ijma' is hujjah. After Quran, Sunnah is ijma'. So Ibn Taymiyyah, in his time, 800 years after this, he said he's Hanbali himself. He's one of the followers of Imam Ahmad, but he's something else, someone else, and he's a genius, although has controversial opinions. Many ulama actually are responding to him, but one has to acknowledge how knowledgeable this man was. So he said, no, 3 divorce must be one back to the time of the Prophet and Abu Bakr. And because people go around the law and finding muhallil, so 3 divorce counts as 1. And guess what? He was punished. He was considered mubtada'. In all Muslim majority countries now, they take the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah, which was very unpopular and considered dalal and kharij al-sharia, against sharia and so on. So what I'm saying is that ijtihad sometimes might sound strange, but later on people find value in it and making it easy for people to come back. And this saved so many families, right? So that's another example of how Sharia or Islamic law must consider the change of custom. But custom cannot contradict what is well established in the Nas. Yani if Allah says cannot eat pork or drink alcohol, khalas, you cannot. Unless even this, with the very clear orders from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even there, Sharia also shows flexibility. And this is what is known in Islamic law as al-rukhsah wal-azima. Al-rukhas wal-azima. Rukhsah versus azima. Rukhsah is permission, easy way out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us with azima. Azima, you have to do this. You have to pay zakah, you have to fast. But there are some rukhas, right? Rukhsah actually we translate as license. It's a license, rukhsah, allowance, permission, easy way out. You cannot eat dead animals. You cannot eat pork. But guess what? In some situations, law of necessity kicks in. People are hungry and there's famine. They have to save their life, and only dead animals, go and eat it. Haram becomes halal. So the azima, you cannot eat dead animals. That's azima. But in some situations, the haram becomes halal. Or the wajib is forgiven. So hajj, you have to make hajj, but I'm not healthy enough, I'm not wealthy enough. Allah, forget about it, drop. I can fast, but fasting in Ramadan will make it so tough because I'm sick or I'm traveling. Quran says, Allah, you don't have to fast, but you can make it up later on. I cannot make it up later on. I'm getting older, and the older I get, the weaker I am. So I cannot make it up later on. So feed one person per day, and that's it. I cannot feed anybody. I'm so poor. Khalas, don't do anything. So there's always rukhsah and azima. Rukhsah and azima, right? Another obvious example of rukhsah is when some Sahaba were forced to say the word of kufr and they were tortured, and they said the word of kufr. And they came crying to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, they forced us to say these evil words. And we said it. And the Prophet said, how do you find your heart? He said, my heart's full of iman. He said, that's if they force you to say it, don't worry. As long as your heart is full of iman. So this is rukhsa, even to say the word of kufr, if your heart is full of iman. So are so many examples that shows how flexible Islamic law is. The ahkam, thawabit, unchangeable rules are known to all Muslims, but the other rules, which was not in a decisive language in the Quran, then it is subject to ijtihad. So we have the Quran and the Sunnah, we have the ijtihad, and ijtihad must be done within the ethical values in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Some of the rukhas that we are not aware of, we talked about it, the Quran tafsir, is what was Sharia before us has changed. Yani, in the old days, the Sharia, if a najasa came on your clothes, then you have to cut it. It's not like cannot purify it by washing it. No, you have to cut it, patch it with something else. The tawbah of Bani Israel from worshiping the calf was to kill themselves. They gather on place, it was dark, and just kill yourself until it was said that's enough. That was their tawbah. But for us, our tawbah is between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Zakah was 25%. A lot of money, not 2.5. It is 25%. 1/4 of your wealth. That's too much for me, right? Even Muslims now argue that 2.5 is considered too much. And they try to find a way to make it like, oh, but I paid this and I paid that. How about this? How about that? They try to reduce the 2.5 even more. So, but imagine if the zakah was 25%. That's a huge amount of money. So our Sharia, alhamdulillah, is flexible, reasonable. That's why when we pray in the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, رَبَّنَا وَلَا تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْنَا إِصْرًا كَمَا حَمَلْتَهُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِنَا. Right? So there was isr, there were toughness in the Sharia, because they were tough people. They see the ayat, but they don't believe. They always won't see Allah with their own eyes. They won't see the angels coming down. They see the ayat that Allah opened the sea for them, but they are still want to worship a calf. So because they were tough, hard-headed people, then their Sharia was tough on them. So Muhammad ﷺ came, and one of the descriptions of Muhammad ﷺ is الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث ويضع عنهم إصرهم والأغلال التي كانت عليهم. He will just remove these shackles and the hardship that was prescribed for them. So the Sharia Muhammad ﷺ is the easiest and most flexible Sharia. You have to understand Islamic law as such. So azima is when you have no excuse. You have to come for Jum'ah. But there's rukhsa not to pray Jum'ah if you are traveling, if you are not feeling well, or if it's snowing and there's a snowstorm and it's dangerous for you to come, then you switch to rukhsa. So the azima is to come. The rukhsa is to pray home. Like Rasulullah ﷺ, when he said to the mu'adhin in a rainy day, don't say hayya ala salah, hayya al falah. Instead say pray at home, pray at home. So the norm is the azima. The exception is the rukhsa. Cannot switch this. All right. Any question about rukhsa and azima? All right. So the other point I just want to briefly talk about is the fiqh actually deals with two important sections. Any book of fiqh. This is one example of fiqh al-sunnah, very famous book, and it's available in English. That was written by Sheikh Said Sabiq from Al-Azhar. In the time when people in Egypt in particular, like four madhab are taught, even the Ja'fari madhab is introduced in Al-Azhar for students of fiqh to be aware of other madhab. So, but regular people do not know. Things are so difficult. So he wrote this book to simplify fiqh. This is one example. So any book of fiqh, big or small, you will find that there are two main sections. Now, the first section is called fiqh al-ibadat. Fiqh al-ibadat, the fiqh of ibadat. And usually start with tahara, because tahara is a prerequisite for salah, right? So instead of starting with salah, they start with the tahara. If not all, most of books of fiqh start like this. Talk about tahara, anwa' najasa, the impurity, and how to purify what's impure, and shower and wudu and all these subjects, and then come to the salah, the arkan al-salah and the sunan and the different kind of salah and wajibat al-salah and makruhat al-salah, sunan al-salah, and so on. And then they talk about zakat in details, and then siyam, then hajj. And we talk about the janaiz, salatul janaza, and so on. That's the first section. The fiqh, how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? How to pay zakah, how to fast in Ramadan. All these details are the first section of the books of fiqh. The second is what's known as fiqhul mu'amalat, the fiqh of transactions, and usually start with family law, marriage, khutbah, engagement, aqd, shurut al-aqd, al-wali, and then we talk about divorce and custody and so on. And then mu'amalat, it includes contracts, the contract law in Islam, contract of renting, buying, and lending money without interest, and planned and business partnership, sharaka, and all these kind of things. Food, what is allowed to eat and what's not allowed to eat, and hunting, sayd, the adab and the hukm or ahkam sayd. Qism al-ayman, the oath, when you make an oath of doing something or not doing something, how to fulfill it, or if you have to do something against it, how can you do kafara? And then you have the criminal law, obviously, that has to do with al-hudud and qisas, which is equality and justice, and warfare, war and peace, and who decides, waging wars and making peace treaties and so on and so forth. And then they talk about the judiciary affairs, the qada, and who is qualified to be the qadi, and so on. Clothes, and what's allowed and what's not allowed when it comes to clothes, and inheritance, law of inheritance. So this is basically the two sections in any book of fiqh: qism al-fiqh al-ibadat, and then fiqh al-mu'amalat. Fiqh al-ibadat usually relies heavily on nusus. Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. The Prophet said, "Pray as you've seen me pray." So if you want to know how to pray, go and see the hadith that describe the salah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the area of ijtihad here is not as big as fiqh al-mu'amalat, because the mu'amalat change all the time. The banking system and the transactions and new transactions and insurance and credits and so on. Every day we have new transactions, and then the Sharia has to respond to this. And so many in the modern time write about Islamic finance. I'm not talking about companies, I'm talking about real scholars who try to introduce the Islamic version of banking system. What is the alternative from Islamic perspective? Because current banking system is based on haram, based on riba, start with, right? So what is the alternative? What alternatives does Islam provide? Al-Iqtisad al-Islami. Some scholars actually specialized in areas of medical affairs, what's allowed and what's not allowed in medicine. So many tough questions come, very unbelievable. And that's why it takes a bunch of scholars to do ijtihad together, not one person. Collective ijtihad is needed. So fiqh al-mu'amalat, I believe fiqh al-mu'amalat need more ijtihad, more new ideas that can reconcile the text and the context. My PhD thesis, actually the title is Text and Context, a methodological approach to reforming Islamic family law in the American context. So fiqh al-mu'amalat is, I believe, because it changed rapidly, quickly, then it requires a lot of fiqh. And this fiqh actually requires the cooperation between the scholars of Islamic law and the scholars of the area that they're studying, whether it is economy or politics or medicine and so on. I attended one of these conferences in the European Council for Fatwa and Research. Sheikh al-Qaradawi was the president then, rahimahullah, Stockholm, 2003. And I was amazed when I saw really scholars, scientists actually, sitting and making papers from scientific perspective about the timing of Salah and how because in these Scandinavian countries, in the summer, the day is so short. I was there in the summer, there was no darkness. And Isha was, I think, 12:30, and Fajr was 2:30, something like this. And you can read a book, actually. So the day is so long, and Muslims fast there, about 20 hours fasting. And the opposite in the winter. The day is so short. So how to decide how to pray Fajr and Isha and how to fast? Should you break your fasting before the sun sets, or you have to fast 20 hours? A lot of discussion. So they have ulama, and they actually talked about the timing and from scientific perspective. Another important lecture I remember is talking about gelatin. Many questions come about gelatin. So a scientist actually there is swearing, right? He's specialized in chemistry and things like this. He said that gelatin, regardless where it's coming from, whether cows or pork or whatever, it has to go through chemical processes to change it to something else that can be part of medicine or candies or chocolate or something like this. So in Islamic law, there's something called al-istihala. Al-istihala means the change. So the hukm change when something changes. So, and the best example they always give in the Islamic books of Islamic fiqh is al-khamr, alcohol. Alcohol may change into, after a while, right? Into what do you call it? Vinegar. So alcohol changed into vinegar. Now, is it haram to consume it or not? Originally, alcohol was haram, but it changed into vinegar. Is it haram to consume vinegar? No. So it doesn't matter where it's coming from. It was haram when it was wine, and now it's not wine anymore, it is vinegar. Then you can use it. So the hukm changed as the thing, the substance changes. Does this make sense? So he said that this gelatin cannot, the original gelatin that supposedly coming from pork, cannot be used in these products unless or until they add other chemicals that for fragmentation and change into something totally different. So originally it is haram, but the gelatin that's used in these products is not the same as it was naturally existing. So the hukm also changed. I know some want to stay away from gelatin altogether. Fine, that's okay. But I heard it from a Muslim scientist who made an oath. So wallahi, I am telling you, he knows exactly. So we have to trust him, right? And the hukm changed. That you can eat something that includes gelatin. The answer, if you feel comfortable to this opinion or can make more research, ask what does it take to turn the original natural gelatin comes from pork into a product like chocolate, for example. Does it stay the same, or it has to change from, and the name changed also. They give it chemical names. So still call it gelatin because it's coming from gelatin, but it's not gelatin. Again, and I know you're going to ask me about this. If you don't feel comfortable with this, stay away from it. Alhamdulillah. But what I'm saying is the ulama of chemistry and medicine and physics and all these kind of different kind of sciences must also be involved in the fatwa when it comes to fiqh al-mu'amalat, right? Any comment or questions? No. Yes. Go ahead. Your microphone here.
You said that the Muslim countries follow the Ibn Taymiyyah's thing about the three talaq, but
except in India
and Pakistan. Yes.
No, Pakistan changed now. They changed.
Oh, they dread in all of the family situations. If they say three talaq, it's over.
Yeah, because this is their understanding of their Hanafi madhab. And what happened is, if Abu Hanifa himself was alive today, he would have changed most of his fatwas when it comes to Muhammad, because he was a genius. He was genius. And the followers, and this is actually the next point I want to talk about. I thought maybe we'll talk about this in details next week. Taqlid and ijtihad. So the followers of an imam are following the fatwas of the imam, but they're not in the same level of him to disagree with the imam. So no, the book says haram. It's 3 or 3. Khalas. We're not going to change our religion. Yeah, akhi, you're not changing. Look at all Muslim countries. The Azhar in Egypt, Zaytuna in Tunisia, all these big, huge institutions. They say that that's right. Keep it. That's closer to the objectives, the spirit of Islamic law. Because the spirit of Islamic law is keep the family together as much, as long as possible. Make divorce difficult, make marriage easy, and divorce difficult. And by the way, this is what American law also is trying to do: making marriage easy to apply for marriage license, but difficult to divorce. Why? Because same philosophy. We need families. Keep the family. Make divorce difficult. Give people more chance. Mediators, arbitrators, family members will intervene to keep them together. So they don't understand this. Simply, they think this is ijma'. You cannot go against ijma'. They pray 20 rak'ahs in Taraweeh. And I told them, listen, in the summer, let's pray 8 only. In the summer, just make it short. People can go get maybe 1 hour sleep more. And in the winter, make 20 rak'ahs. I'm not against 20. No. This ijma'. It has to be 20. Cannot. What do you mean ijma'? So those who pray 8 rak'ahs are against ijma', going to hell? Or keep it easy for people. No, it has to be 20 rak'ahs. And the same thing, this is rigidity. Thinking that this madhab is the only madhab that teach the true Islam, and everybody. Abu Hanifa himself was asked. This is the difference between an imam, highly educated, and followers. Abu Hanifa was asked, is what you say the absolute truth and other opinions are wrong? He said, no, I never said that. إِنَّ ظُنُّ إِلَّا ظَنًّا وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمُسْتَيْقِنِينَ. He quoted an ayah. The Quran said, it's my dhan. This is what I think is right. I'm not 100% sure. And if you want to know anything about fiqh, okay, so you don't have to be a faqih to know drinking wine is haram, right? You don't have to be a faqih, right? But it takes faqih to know the subtle, confusing subjects. That takes research, looking at the evidence, analyzing it. That takes a faqih, right? So when a faqih makes a fatwa or reach a conclusion or hukm, then if he's really faqih, he always say in the end, Wallahu a'lam. What does this mean? It means that I cannot be 100% sure. Because they always change their opinions. When new evidence come and he hears about another opinion that's very solid, said, yeah, I changed my mind. I used to give you fatwa haram, now I think it's halal. They themselves change their opinions. So they never said what we say is the absolute truth. Imam Shafi'i put it in a beautiful way when he said, my opinion, I believe. My opinion is right, others are wrong. He says, my opinion, I believe my opinion is right, could be wrong. Others are wrong, could be right. That's humility, that's scholarship. But with those who said, okay, this is the only, it's hell and heaven, it's Islam versus kufr, yani, these are ignorant.
My second question is about, you said that the Sahaba, from their heart, they had not lost their iman. So is that taqiyya, and what are the rules for that?
Yeah, إِلَّا مَنْ أُكْرِهَ. Al-Quran says, إِلَّا مَنْ أُكْرِهَ. Sometimes you find yourself in a position where you have to choose between keeping your life or lying to the enemies. So in this case, lying to the enemies is permissible to keep your life. But what if someone said, no, you want to kill me? Just go ahead. Like Ashab al-Ukhdud, we talked about them 2 Fridays ago. You have the ruqsa, but I'm not going to take the ruqsa. I don't have to. I'm going to kill you if you don't say this and that. So, okay, go ahead, kill me. And they kill him. He becomes shaheed. So he took the azima, not the ruqsa. He has the ruqsa. I can take it. You don't have to take the ruqsa. If it's snowing and snowstorm and you still want to drive to come to Jum'ah, nobody will say, oh, haram. No, I want to take the azima. But others can take the ruqsa. So you don't blame others for, because in the hadith, in Hibban, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna Allah yuhibbu an tu'ta rukhasu kama yuhibbu an tu'ta azaimu." Beautiful. And we used to say this hadith to my mother, rahimahullah, because she feels so bad when she does not fast in Ramadan. And she's taking all this kind of medication, have health issues. And we always say that Allah loves to see his servants following his rukhsa as he loves to see them taking azima. Right? So when you have an excuse, when you take the rukhsa, Allah will be happy with you. Right? So because normally you come for Jum'ah, but today is a snow and I'm going to drive this construction and the roads are not cleaned yet, so it's high risk. So I'll pray at home. You make your own judgment, and if you think it's risky to come to the masjid, then you can take the rukhsa. You are not feeling well, but you determined to fast, but after dhuhr, you feel like I have to take my medicine, I cannot. Halas, take the rukhsa. Rukhsa is there. Right? But if someone does not take the rukhsa and took the azima, then that's fine. So so this taqiyya thing is when you see a huge danger on you, and many minorities actually have done this, but this is the exception, not the norm. That's important to emphasize. Otherwise, lying will be the norm. Oh, keep lying. This lady told me that she was doing Hajj with us, and her husband is Shia. She's Sunni. And she was coming with us in the group, Hajj group. We stayed together for like 10 days. And she was narrating this. She said, "Oh, my husband he said to my father, I came from Shia background, but I swear I will do anything she wants me to do. I will, And later on, she found out that he's a hardcore Shia. I said, "Come on, you told me." Okay, that was Tufi. Okay, we got married. Halas, you're my wife now. So that's, again, the rukhsa must be determined where to draw the line. Otherwise, lying, if this is the norm, then one cannot trust such a person. Yes. Okay, halas. Right. So ijtihad and taqlid is another important subject that we need to understand, that not everyone is expected to be a scholar in fiqh. So what do? We follow one of the imams that we trust two things: their knowledge and their character, or taqwa, or righteousness. Right? If you trust someone's knowledge, he's qualified, has credentials, and he is known, I would say, because you cannot really measure the taqwa, but he's known as a person who's independent and free thinker, and he does not benefit from fatwas, or is not like trying to satisfy the political authority. So he has a good reputation. Let's put it this way. Yes.
What's the meaning of the word yadman or daman?
Damina or yadman, that I mentioned earlier, tadmin as-sunnah. Damina means to take responsibility. So if someone took a loan from someone, so okay, I'll give you the loan, but you need to have a damin, a third person. What do you call it in law?
Guarantor.
Guarantor. So I say, I'm a guarantor. If he did not pay, I will take care. I sign as a guarantor. So damin, adman.
My dad was in a business where he used to yadman the right of the city to collect taxes from people who come from outside or inside, and give them the rukhsa. And he writes it.
Right. Right.
He would be called
damin. Yes, absolutely. This is the word damin or damin is used in Islamic jurisprudence. Yes. So he's responsible. He guarantees that he will take care of this thing, right? So the common question when it comes to what madhab should we follow? What is our madhab? Do we have to have a madhab? No, you don't have to have a madhab, right? If you grew up worshipping in Algeria, for example, or Morocco, naturally you'll be Maliki. You'll worship based on the Maliki, right? You put your hand down, and you would pray with 2 rakats and then followed by one separate. that does not make you Maliki. It makes you worship based on the Maliki madhab, but you are not specialized in it. So if you go travel somewhere else, come to America here, the local masjid's imam is not Maliki, so you ask him a question, and he gives you the answer and follow it. That's it. Don't ask him what is your madhab. If you trust this imam's knowledge and character, then ask him, and whatever fatwa he gives you, khalas, go ahead and do it. And by doing this, you are not responsible. You need to also understand that in many cases, people have different fatwas, different opinions. Someone say halal, someone say haram. Someone said it's okay, permissible. Some know it's not permissible. Okay, and that's normal. We should not feel bad about it because they all extract their rulings from their understanding of the text. Okay, so taqleed is the opposite of ijtihad. Ijtihad, the person who reached the level of ijtihad, he would go to the Quran and the Sunnah and analyze them and apply qiyas and ijma' and maslaha and urf and all these kind of tools that we can talk about when we talk about usul fiqh, and then he reach a conclusion because he is qualified, like a surgeon, right? A surgeon is qualified and he goes and open up the body of a person and fix some stuff and close it. He knows what to do. He's qualified and he can practice this. But imagine if someone was not qualified and tried to do an open heart surgery for someone. And this is what happens all the time. And the result is disasters. Okay, so a mujtahid is a person who reached this level of qualifications. And the ulama talked about what makes someone a mujtahid. They talked about, of course, Muslim and adult, and he knows the Quran, not just Hafiz Quran. He knows the tafsir and nasikh and mansukh and Makki and Madani. He knows the Quran very well, and he knows the Sunnah of the Prophet, the Hadith, and he knows the difference between Hadith al-Ahad and Mutawatir, al-Mashhur, wal-Sahih, wal-Da'if, wal-Munqati', wal-Mu'dal, wal-Mushkil, wal-Mawdu'. He knows all these things, okay, and then he knows the Arabic language. Very important to master the Arabic language, all right, and to know the pre-Islamic use of the language and poetry and nahwu, sarf, the grammar and morphology and so on, and then knows an-nasikh wal-mansukh, what abrogated, because there are some rulings abrogated by new rulings, wal-am wal-khas wal-mutlaq wal-muqayyad. He needs to know all this, the structure of methodology, and also to be smart, to have some sense of intelligence. I don't know how to measure this, but if someone's dumb, cannot be a faqih, because like any profession, you can imagine a judge sitting and making a judgment that affects lives of people. He must have some sort of intelligence, right? Should not be naive, and people just can deceive him. Should be smart. This is basically the qualifications of a mujtahid. So when someone had all these tools, then he's mujtahid. He cannot just go and follow someone else. No, he will reach a conclusion himself. And people who are muqallid, like the mass majority of the people are muqallid. Muqallid means follower. So whatever the imam says, I will do it. Right? I'm not specialized in fiqh. I have no time to study Islamic law in depth, but sometimes imams give a fatwa or a ruling, and they give also the rationale behind it, the dalil, called dalil. Dalil could be nassi or ijtihadi. Yani dalil could be an ayah of the Quran or a hadith or qiyas or maslaha and so on and so forth. So should the ammi ask about the dalil? No. Actually, there's a statement that ulama says, إذا سأل العمي عن الدليل فاضربوه. When the ammi, the one who knows nothing about dalil and so on, does ask an imam, and the imam gave him a fatwa, said, yes, it's permissible, you can do it. So what is the dalil? Just slap him in his face. Why are you asking what dalil? Right? When a doctor prescribes medicine, it's okay, what are the ingredients of this medicine? How does it function? Why this? Why not that? And how it interact with them? Why are you asking this? So, I mean, because even if the doctor tries to explain to you, you won't understand the terminology, right? So why ask about dalil? It happened sometimes, like So someone came to me after khutbah, not in this masjid yet. So, and he said, "Oh, well, what is the dalil about this?" I said, "Did you study usul fiqh?" He said, "No, I did not study usul fiqh." "Do you know what is the definition of dalil?" He said, "No." I said, "Why are you asking me about dalil and you don't even know what dalil is?" So, but it is always good for imams to educate people, to tell them, okay, this is, I think it's what I believe is halal or haram, permissible, because of this and that. So people feel comfortable that this fatwa is not just coming from nowhere. It's based on established rulings in Islam. It's always good for al-muqallid to increase his or her level of knowledge, to have some idea about the dalil and the different kinds of dalil and so on, and not to debate with scholars, but to also feel comfortable which opinion to follow. So someone will tell you it's permissible to buy homes through mortgage, for example. Others said, no, it's haram, it's riba, it's absolutely haram. Now someone is saying, okay, go ahead, save a lot of money and a lot of headache. And someone said, no, it is riba, you're going to go to hell if you do that. Okay, so I always tell people, when it comes to simple things, you don't have to know the dalil, right? Should I put my hand like this or like this or like this? Not a big deal. But when it comes to riba or zakat or big questions, then you should do your homework and study as much as you can. It's what we do in our life, right? When you buy something like a big investment, you buy a house, then you don't buy the first house you see, right? You have to compare different homes, because buying a house is a big decision, right? So you need to do your homework, do research, ask the experts. And same thing when you buy a car or expensive things. So you always ask the experts, do some homework. Although you're not a real estate agent, but you'll ask the experts, because you are. So when it comes to fiqh issues that are controversial and consequential, then you need to spend some time and effort and try to understand why it is this opinion says haram and why this opinion says halal, and then you do what you feel comfortable. You don't choose based on easiness necessarily, but if you have two opinions, one is based on very solid adillah, and other, the rationale, the dalils are not as strong, then you go with the one that you think has stronger dalil, even if it makes your life a little more difficult. So the choice is not based on what's convenient and easy, but based on what is more solid. Yes, Sister Jamila. Now, I'll take your question.
The sauce. That's okay. The sauce in the restaurants, the alcohol sauce, the sauce in the restaurants, they have alcohol in it. And of course, they fire up and they cook it. So is that repeated or?
Yeah, so what you are, yeah.
Is the alcohol?
Can you repeat the question? So, yeah.
The sauce in the restaurants, they have alcohol in it. And of course, they cook it. Is that turned into that?
Well, some said that it evaporates, so does not have any effect, does not intoxicate you. When you eat it, you don't get intoxicated, right? You can drive home safely, right? And therefore, they said it's not there. Others, I prefer not to at all altogether, because actually some scholars consider it najasa. It's impure. Yes, alcohol is, because Allah said, إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه. So many ulama said that alcohol is like urine. If it comes on your clothes, then you have to wash your clothes. It's najis. So you want to put something najis in the food, even if it evaporates and does not intoxicate. I personally don't feel comfortable doing it. But others said, well, it's not najis anyways, or the najasa here, different opinion. You read the same text, but you reach different opinion. So the najasa is najasa معنوية, not حسية. يعني الأنصاب, the idols that you used to worship, is it najis if you touch Buddha's statue? Does this make your hand impure? No, it's not like physical impurity, but rather it is spiritual impurity. All right. So al-khamr is impure because of what it causes, intoxication and so on, not impure in of itself. Okay. So different opinions, but I would rather actually I always talk to waitresses and tell them just no alcohol and no pork. Just make sure that okay, we'll let them know. We'll let them know.
Ma'am, can I
Lot.
add a medical twist to this? I practice addiction
Mhm,
medicine,
mhm.
and we tell patients that who have addiction issues that you cannot even use any cough syrup that contains alcohol.
Mm.
Because we know from the receptor situation that if a person has sobriety from alcohol, if they are exposed to even a small amount, the receptor is activated and they will relapse.
Right.
So I think that it's a very interesting thing that Islam coordinates
Right.
with that so much.
Right. And scholars also call upon doctors who make medicine, because most of the medicines in the past include alcohol in its making to keep it, I think, for a longer period of time. So can we have a cough medicine that does not include alcohol? Can we create medicine that does not really have to include alcohol? Because I remember when we were young, we take this medication. Some people actually go and buy the whole carton and they drink it. We saw this. That's why. Yeah. So keep drinking, and then mouthwash actually. Mouthwash. Some people just go and drink it, alcoholic, and this is the only cheapest thing they can afford. They drink it. So we just try to avoid it as much as we can.
I have a question, Ma'am, about
Okay.
why is taqlid so important among the Jafri fiqh?
What?
Taqlid.
Oh.
Well, so
Taqlid.
yes,
Okay.
but it's not like among Sunnis we don't go with that. Like
We do, but in Shiaism it is more organized because you have to have a marja. Marja, yani, for example, Sistani in Iraq. So he has offices here, representatives here. So if you're going to get married or divorced, you have to go to the marja and the representative of the marja. Right? We don't have this in the Sunni Islam. We just make it much easier. Just follow your local imam. You don't have to have a marja. But in Shiaism, it's marja'iyya. Yani Hassan Fadlallah, for example, in Lebanon, was a big marja in the entire world. He has offices and representatives everywhere, right? So people in England get Shias or want to get married, they have to do it in the office of the representative of Fadlallah, for example. Now Imam Birri, Abdul Latif Birri, he announced himself as a marja and he has office. So people have a marja. You cannot just go to another marja easily. You have to stick with your marja. But in Islam, in Sunni Islam, you ask a mufti and whatever fatwa gives you, can do it. Can get married in any Sunni masjid. You don't have to stick with one particular imam. Right? Yes.
Thank you. My question is riba interest or is riba usury? Usury being obviously something that, an interest that people can't pay. I mean, it's to the extent that it makes it so that it's very difficult for people to make a payment. Whereas interest is the cost of doing business and it's how people stay in business in order to lend money. So can you
Yes.
elaborate on what you consider riba?
The definition of riba is كل قرض جر نفعا فهو ربا. كل قرض جر نفعا. Any قرض or loan that is expected to be paid back with more, right? There is riba al-nasi'a and riba al-fadl, and you are talking about two different levels of riba. You are not talking about two different things. They are lending money with interest, but sometimes reasonable, and sometimes it's very unreasonable. But in the end of the day, it is riba. The word usury is now are rarely used because it has very negative connotation. So they don't use usury. They usually use the word interest because it's more cool word. It's not as evil as usury. Because usury, in even Shakespeare's writing and You know, Tajir Bunduqiyya, the very famous story about a Jewish person who used to take advantage of the people. Very famous story. So that was usury. It's like more of evil word. But from Islamic perspective, any qard that produces more is considered riba. And riba sometimes because of the time. So I'll give you money now and you pay it back in a year. That's called nasi'a. Nasi'a من النسء أو التأجيل يعني. Okay, and riba al-fadl. So I give you this 5 pounds of bad date, and you give me 1 pound of excellent date. All right, that's also riba al-fadl. So I give you 5 of low quality, and you give me 1 pound in return of high quality of date. That's called riba al-fadl. So and now actually are doing both riba al-fadl and riba al-nasi'a. So it doesn't matter 1% or 20%, it's still riba. So usury and loan with interest. Some argued, okay, so now for me to have a business of lending the banks, they give money and they expect to make profits out of this. That's exactly what is haram, all right? But because we grew up in this culture, consider this the norm, but that is not supposed to be the norm. It's supposed to be, the alternative is called sharaka or partnership. So I have money, but I don't have any experience. You have experience in business, but you don't have money. So I give you money, you use your experience, do business, and we share the loss as well as the profits, right? But it's not fair for someone to take 0% risk and someone take 100% risk. This is what happened in these banks. If you take a loan to start your business and for some reason it didn't work out, you still need to pay capital plus interest, right? The banks don't lose money. They take your house, throw you out in the street, and will take the house and put it in the market for the remaining payments, and you get nothing, you get zero. Because you're disabled or you lost your job, not because of you're lazy, but the economy went down in 2008 and people lost their jobs and banks did not wait for so long. Cannot pay, get out. We still have the ownership of the bank, and all what you paid, bye-bye. You take 100% risk. We take zero risk. Banks don't take risk. And that's what makes it unethical. And that's why Rasulullah said any contract include lending money with interest is mawdu'. Mawdu' means void. Under my feet, he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the first contract I put under my feet is the contract made by Al-Abbas, my uncle. Abbas was a wealthy person. He used to lend people money and said, the first contract that I nullify is a contract made by my uncle Al-Abbas. So sharaka is the alternative, partnership. But just money cannot beget money. Money makes money by doing business, providing goods or service, right? You provide goods, buying and selling, you make profits, halal, halallahu al-bay'a wa harram al-riba, right? Or you provide service and you take money, right? This is how the economy grows. But 1% of very wealthy people give loans to students. People want to buy homes. People want to buy cars. And then these people have to pay with interest at endless payments. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but usually many people who live like the student loan, and then they have to take a loan, another loan for their home, another loan for their cars, then they will, very few people are able to pay off all these debts before their death.
Then, Imam, why has the Fiqh Council of North America classified institutional interest as all right?
I'm not aware of this. I have to read exactly what they wrote and the rationale. I cannot just make judgment.
So mortgage interest is haram.
Okay, so mortgage interest relates to the first point I made. All right, so the Fiqh Council of North America is following the European Council for Fatwa and Research, I attended these lectures and I read all papers. We passed time, but we can keep going. So they said, okay, so there are two valid, solid Sharia laws or قواعد الفقهية يعني they made this haram into halal, which is, it's originally haram. Like buying or signing any contract that includes interest is haram, whether a credit card or mortgage. But say credit card, don't sign a credit card contract until or unless you are going to pay in full. So the contract itself is invalid from Sharia perspective, but because of the need to have credit history and so on, then don't buy anything unless you have the price for it. So when the bills or the statement comes, then you have to pay in full. Don't use it to buy luxurious things that you cannot pay. You know that you cannot pay. Then you start paying interest. That's haram. For mortgage, the ulama said that originally the contract is haram, but because there's no Islamic alternative, there's no Islamic bank can do what I just mentioned, sharaka, any partnership. And because this is the law of the land, Imam Abu Hanifa said that if Muslims live in non-Muslim countries, these kind of contracts, if this is their system, non-Muslims are not required to follow Sharia law. If this is their law, then it's okay to sign this invalid from Sharia perspective contracts because this is their law. All right? You cannot control the economical system in a non-Muslim country. Second, that's Abu Hanifa. That's why I said earlier he's genius and he was ahead of his time. The second important argument for this is that القاعدة الفقهية التي تقول أن الحاجة تنزل منزلة الضرورة إذا عمت بها البلوى. يعني the ضرورة is the necessity, it's like life or death. Something that you have to eat, you have to have a shelter, you have to drink water. These are like life or death. These are called necessities. That's why Islam said you cannot eat pork unless you reach this level of necessity. You're going to die, you can eat pork, you can drink alcohol to survive, right? Necessity. And below necessity, what is needed? Hajiyat. Hajiyat is not life and death, but without it, your life will be so difficult. Like having a car now. You're not going to die if you don't have a car, but your life will be very difficult, right? A phone and computer and refrigerator, for example. We can live without these things technically, but our life will be difficult, right? So they said the hajiyat takes the same ruling of daruriyat in many cases when it becomes the norm. So the haja takes the ruling of darura, necessity, like eating pork or eating dead animals. And therefore, owning a house is not a necessity. You can live without owning a house, but it is almost very close from necessity in our case. So applying these to Abu Hanifa's opinion about signing invalid contract in non-Muslim countries, and this qaida that al-hajiyat tanzil manzilat al-daruriyat. And Imam al-Qaradawi for 20 years, he says he used to give it, no, he cannot buy a house because this is haram. He cannot buy a house through this conventional mortgage because it is haram. After 20 years, he wrote in his book, Fiqh al-Aqalliyat al-Muslima, he said after visiting many European countries and here in America, and he saw and he heard from real Muslim families, those who suffered tremendously renting, and that can kick you out by the end of the contract. They have the right not to renew the contract. Then you have to keep moving, especially if you have many kids. It is very difficult. It puts you in a weaker position. You are in disadvantage. Whereas if you buy a house, then give you more security. You choose the place near the masjid or community you like and the school district you desire, and then the money you are spending is going to come back to you. There's so many benefits and so many harm. So based on these things, he changed his opinion, and the majority of the council actually changed their opinion. So it is originally haram, no doubt. But does this apply to necessity? Almost. It's there. We'll continue inshallah some other time. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Can someone call